Welcome, everyone, to our first episode of Tree Actions for 2026, our start of our fourth season. And we're excited to be back for another year. Hey, Tony.
Absolutely. Totally excited.
And joining us on our 4-year kickoff is Jerry Kelly. I think also known as the Tree Monkey.
Yeah.
How's it going, Jerry?
Oh, real well, thank you.
Right on. Well, it's going to be an interesting episode. I'm looking forward to it, and I think we'll just get right into it with the question that we ask all our guests, and that is, if you would share with us, Jerry, the first memory that you have of feeling connected to a tree or trees.
Wow. That's interesting because I had gotten fired from a job, and I had no idea what a tree was, to be honest with you. And I lived about 5 minutes from Hendricks Victoria trees at the time. And I figured, well, I had 2 miles to feed, so I went there, and Joe Enberg interviewed me.
Yeah.
He said that after about 5 minutes, okay, you're hired. Start dragging brush tomorrow. And I was like, what? And so, that was it. That's what got me started. And the funniest thing about all that was I fell in love with it so fast. And, you know, learning the proper pruning techniques, um, and things like that. That was a lot of fun to learn. And I think that the other thing that enamored me so much was the fact that working at Hendricks and the Curatrice at the time, and obviously we went through a couple name changes after that. Um, we had different climbing levels you had to achieve to get to certain points, and I was a person I always liked to challenge myself to be better and better. And through it, I became a crew leader, and I just went, and I fell in love with it. I mean, I used to tell people I got to climb trees for the fun of it, and get paid for it. And that's how I felt.
Yeah.
I never looked at the tree care industry as a job, because it really wasn't. Because when you got to go up and graduate throughout the process, you got to share your knowledge with other people.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's well, and especially if it's something that you really enjoy or love, it's kind of, it inherently goes with wanting to share it with others, eh?
Oh yeah, exactly. And just to jump really far ahead here is, um, I have a group full of guys that used to call me Papa Smurf in the wintertime. It's early beard and everything else. And it was about 40 years ago. A bunch of them pitched in and bought me a big coffee mug, thermos, if you will, that said Papa Smurf on it. And I still stay in contact with a lot, probably about 8 to 9 people up north.
So do you remember the first tree experience?
The first tree experience that I had was, uh, I remember climbing a Norway maple, and it it was an adventurous because you had to learn different techniques of how to thin out the tree so it's not heavy, and how to make it more presentable and things like that. And you had to do two things there. You had to um, work with the client, what their needs were, and what the actual health of the tree was needed to. So the time it came somewhat of a sticky point, you know, and I was just like, okay. And but one of the craziest pruning jobs I ever did was in Lake Forest, Illinois. Uh, I I did a hedge pruning job of maple trees, and it was done in the middle of winter time, and it was one of the most gut wrenching pruning jobs I'd ever done. But I learned a lot from it.
Doing hedges.
Yeah, they um I they're called they're English type pruning trees, Northern maples, and I for goodness, I mean I forgot what they are right now.
Probably, was it pollarding it, Jerry? Were you pollarding them?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, doing pollards, which is a lot of small cuts and many of them.
Oh, it's incredible. We used to get lifts, and you have to go up and over the hedges and just prune them down so that they created the vision that the client wanted, and it was just an incredible job to do. And the other one that was similar to that, that was we did a um, hedges of ripe pears,
Yeah,
and
okay.
we did those similar. And the only thing I didn't like about those is you had those included crotches,
Right.
and it just made things so much more difficult because if you weren't careful, you're gonna have dead limbs inside Bradford that Bradford Fair before the spring.
Yeah. So you weren't climbing in those though.
No, no. Well, you could a little bit, but it didn't serve a purpose. I mean, most of the time, because as you know, when you start topping trees like that, still to this day, in my opinion, because I've had a couple of my guys still ask me of how would they do something like this, is when you start doing things like to those, oh, excuse me, things like that to those trees or any type of flowering, the issue that you're going to run into, you run into is you're going to have very little strength on the upper parts of those trees because at some point in time it almost becomes like you're just turning a hedge. How does it do it like that? You know, you just get old hand saws and pole pruers and all that good stuff. But it always challenged me. You know, things like that would always like, okay, this is something new that I get to put in my repertoire. And what was funny, because at one time before I ever got into this industry, I used to sell cars. But I what I did with that is I used to have an evidence book of how I sold them, why I sold them, and I took pictures of the cars and show them to clients. So at some point in time, I've actually, because as you well know, when you're in the industry, you're always encouraged to upsell if you can. I don't just upsell to upsell. I want to show them the benefits of it. So I always take pictures before and after. And I get clients like, okay, it sounds good. Let's do it. And that to me was the best part about it all is seeing the gratification of a client. Because at the end, that's what our job is to satisfy a client.
Yeah, it's an interesting industry, isn't it? Because like you said it earlier, trying to meet the client's needs and then also do what's best for the tree, and that's not that sometimes can be a challenge.
Yeah, especially when you have clients that want to top out trees. And and then as you well know, then you get down to I know you've been to Lake Forest many times. And then when you work along Lake Forest, you have clients who are a different breed, and they want to see vistas down in their ravine areas. So then you start destroying trees in ravines just so they can see through the trees, and it's unhealthy. But the client says, "Well, it's down in the ravine. I just want to see the lake." And you're like, "That's what they get," and it's difficult to walk that fine line sometimes, as you well know.
Yeah, yeah, it is a fine line. Yeah, it's probably the yeah, anybody, that's done tree work for any length of time and learns about trees, because it's always funny, you learn about tree care and tree biology, but it often doesn't fit, like you say, with what a customer wants done to their trees. They don't normally fit together well. So trying to make both fit is part of the real art of arboriculture or caring for
Exactly.
trees. Yeah. The business of arboriculture.
Well, the
Fascinating.
yeah, well, the funny part is with trees, people they'll top a tree and they'll want you to top a tree, and their justification is, well, it lives, right? Like it didn't kill it, it can't be bad for it. Like it just
That's how to climb it.
right, right, exactly. So it just yeah, you see it all the time, and then I think the other thing that comes in with poor tree care is a lot of line clearance work is confused with what passes for standard arboriculture. Just because they do it for line clearance doesn't mean it's necessarily good for the tree. It's good for the power line,
Yeah.
right? But it's not necessarily the best thing for the tree. So there's a lot of confusion out
Pruning the wires from the trees.
there. Yeah, that would
Boy, oh
be
boy. That is sometimes with willow trees.
felling poles. I couldn't move the tree any further from the line, so I felled the pole to move the line from the tree.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that?
Then you sit there and you see the tips of these lines the tips of these trees is burnt. And excuse me, even though I had the certification beyond 2.3 meters to the line, I don't feel really good about that.
No. Especially, yeah, you got to time it with the gusts of wind, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, the nuances of tree work, right? I think there's a lot of things like that, people don't if you haven't done it, you don't realize, like, you know, suddenly realizing or noticing how close a wire might be or, you know, trying to is trying to explain to a customer that that's just not really good for the tree and them completely not hearing it or not caring and then trying to like decide how you want to manage that. And that happens repeatedly, and sometimes people get, some guys just don't want to talk to customers because they just can't. They're tired of it.
Agree. I agree.
Yeah, I'm sure people can relate to that. I think maybe it's one of the reasons you have the salesmen are always separate from the guys doing the work because you can't.
And unfortunately, these sales folks think they have exactly what the be all end all is going to be sometimes, and they don't realize once you get up in a tree, oh, we got a bad patch, or we have a hollowed area, and things like. Now what are we going to do? And how are we going to either try to support it, or we're going to have to take it out to make everything else around it safe.
Yep. So did you spend most of your career, would you say, climbing, Jerry? Did you do bucket work as well?
Yeah, I did. I did bucket work, but um, I prefer to be up inside that tree.
Right.
Um, because your hands on really per se, where you get better cuts, in my estimation, in a lot of ways, uh, and things like that. Yeah, there's something about being up inside a tree. I mean, I remember when we first started climbing trees, we were using wooden ladders,
Oh, yeah.
extension ladders, and throwing those suckers up and pushing them up as you go, because we didn't have ropes that pulling ropes up, pull those things up into the tree. You get up on there and took a few steps, push that top thing up, and then you finally got in the tree, and then you had your ground person enjoy trying to take it down.
So you'd use a ladder to get in the tree and then tie in.
Pardon me?
And then tie in after you go.
Yeah, you have to work your way up to your crotch point where you wanted to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, and that was always could have been a dilemma, because when you are actually up inside that tree, you have to be vigilant and you have to be inspecting that tree as you're going. And I think sometimes, in my opinion, that um, that gets overlooked a lot. Because our main goal is to get this tree pruned because we have an hourly rate we're supposed to be making, all this other good stuff. But we bypass sometimes the safety of the tree and the safety of ourselves, and things don't always work out right.
Yeah. 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 Well, there is you know, I, it's probably part of why we know it's an accident prone. I don't know if accident prone industry is fair to say, but we have the statistics to show that people not only get hurt, but also, die from tree work or making mistakes or whatever. But, you know, yeah, it's along the lines of what you're talking about. And I don't know if it's all just, I think a lot of it is, I don't know what it all is, like production oriented, or, focusing on working too fast, or if people get bored, or if people just, I think more than not, they just don't know. I don't know. What would you think?
I think that it's a lot right there. You can put them all in one basket, and that's what it is. I think a lot of it is that we become complacent. Um, I I can I'm gonna say something that may not be on everybody's heart, but this is how I worked every time I climbed a tree. I prayed that God would keep me safe. Um, and here's the funny thing about that, though. I can tell you, and ironically, I can tell you right now, it happened more times in American elms than in any tree I ever climbed. That for some odd crazy reason, there were times I wouldn't pray and I cut a limb, and by the grace of God, that son of a gun got stuck in a crotch. And that sucker should have gone straight to the ground and did damage. And that it was something that was always important to me. And so I remember people said, "That's weird." Well, that's okay. But I had, and like the things you share on Telegram and stuff like that, I really think it's awesome, and it even touches my heart. But people who have things that are important to them, we take extra steps to make sure it's part of our life. And I don't. I mean, I'm not saying people should pray, but find something that you find secure in, that makes you feel better. That if I do it this way, it'll become making sure you become even more conscientious to what you're doing. And I think a lot of it is production. and complacency. I also believe that we don't completely understand trees all the time.
Mhm.
You know, I can tell you many red oaks, and I'm sure you've seen them too, where all of a sudden you're going up in a big old red oak, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? You know, you see, pardon me, you see these big old holes, decays, and I always found out red oaks were famous for that. For me, you know, and and then you find, and if you're not paying attention to that, there's little critters that hide in those holes.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember beating one raccoon that saved me with my pole stick, with the backside of it. Obviously, I was gonna kill it, but I mean, that dude came out hissing at me. I'm like, this ain't happening. I'm up at 75 feet, and it was one of the craziest trees I ever climbed like that. I'm like, I never knew. I gotta be honest with you, I had no idea raccoons would be. I always figured raccoons were like a lot lower type animal in trees or something like that. Never that high.
What's the highest you've seen a raccoon in a tree, Tony, hanging out?
I've scared them pretty high. Like they tend to run up as opposed down. I watched one do a free fall dive like about 65 feet once. Felt kind of bad, but no, it depends. I mean, we've found them pretty high in big trees. Like we have a lot of big tulip poplars around here. They'll get 110, 120 feet, and then if the cavity's up real high, they'll be up that high. But as big as those fat old round bodies can get usually, but they're usually a little lower because they're kind of they're bigger, right? So they need a bigger cavity to crawl into. But when they get going, they're a lot like squirrels ripping through that tree. It's kind of funny, actually.
So, climbing mostly. Do you remember your first, what you climbed on first?
The first big tree.
Well, no,
It's
no, your first setup, like your harness or your climbing belt, the hitch. Do you remember what you climbed on?
um, it was a prusik that,
Okay.
as we all know, will just like take a few slides up and it locks up on you. And then the I don't know the brand off the top of my head you made, but they were almost like uh real thick cloth type saddles,
Oh,
you
yeah, yeah.
know. Um, and you just had those D rings in front of you, and that was pretty much it, you know. And and then you just graduate. We graduated up as we went on and on, you know. And as you know, the tree industry has gotten so technical nowadays. Um, I think it's great we're doing it, but I also fear because I keep up on it and stuff like that. Um, you know, I think sometimes we get ourselves to a point where we put ourselves in a position where um, not good things are going to happen because when we progress and make it, and to me, a lot of it goes back to the type of knots we use. Um, and one of uh, my favorite climbing knots was always using a micro uh, pulley was the French pressic. Yeah, and but I think what's happening, and I've seen it happen. People try these new knots, and they really don't understand the severity of them if they aren't done practice and practice and practice.
Yeah. Well, and I think it gets back to that, I guess, complacency part. I think back to myself the first time I saw, even a I think for me that particularly was a chainsaw and a removal situation where, you know, the using the saw with one hand and then just pushing off chunks, which is pretty common, right? But I remember first watching that thinking, man, you know, I guess I didn't question it too much, but there was definitely a period of time where I thought, man, that's pretty close to the arms close to the bar, like, it seemed a little dangerous, I guess. But once I watched it and then, because of course you're a branch manager. It's the only industry where you start off as a branch manager, right? And, and then, so you witness and watch, and I saw a really bad ladder incident, and so I inherently hated ladders after that, and I wasn't even the guy that fell, but I watched him fall because I was on the ground, and, oh, it was horrific, so there's things you learn by watching as a groundie, right? And then when I got to doing it, it just didn't seem that scary anymore, and I think that's part of it is where we forget or I don't know if the words complacency or familiarity. I think part of it is too is just the mundaneness, like, there's a lot of repetition, right? We do things over and over, and you make and I think it's important for us to remember this one mistake that, you always we all make mistakes, you forget to turn your signal light when you're driving or but when you're climbing in a tree, that one little lapse of judgment, it doesn't even seem fair sometimes, it could be quite consequential, you know?
Yeah, I can attest to that.
Yeah, I suppose you can. I don't know that your story, Jerry's been recorded before, or maybe it has. I know that you've shared it at and you've gone and you speak on it, so I know that you're capable of doing that. And it's certainly that wasn't the intention of our time with you, but I know that you learned some things from it. And I would dare say that most of our listeners at this point don't know your whole story. And I don't know how you want to, if you want to, what you want to tell people about that, what you learned from it, or because you've been an inspiration to me because it's been a long time and you've stuck it out, right? I mean, I guess you don't have a lot of choice, but anyways, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Oh, well, you're exactly right. You know, uh, when I left uh, the care of trees, uh, I had a tremendous opportunity down here in Georgia. Um, and the funny thing is, the districts up up north or Chicago, where we were, are bigger than half the companies down here. I mean, it's so it's sort of funny in a weird way. Um, so I came here in 2006, and I had uh, I had gained a wealth of knowledge. Um, I'm not trying to be boastful or conceited or anything like that. Um, as you well know, I've had you in my life with a lot of training things,
Yeah.
uh, and we've gone through training with other people. Um, but I always enjoyed you being around. It was a lot of fun. Uh, you know, uh, but anywho, uh, things worked out. I moved down here, and I was down here for 2.5 years, and then I was. It was on September 12th, 2008, and I was in a ravine um, because this lady wanted a clear view. And believe it or not, it was a sycamore tree of all things, which are slippier than things, anyways. And
Hmm.
I'll
Yeah.
try those.
A
looking to
slickamore.
yeah, exactly. And and so uh, I was pruning, went down, had lunch, came back up, was finishing it. And the ironic thing was, I went in that day just to fill. I wasn't supposed to work that day. I took the day off. I was going to ride my Harley uh, and up north and have a good time in the mountains. Glad up working, and for, I have no idea what the accident incurred. I do know this that I cut my climbing wall on the climbing line with my silty. Uh, and I was approximately 45 to 50 feet up. I came flying down, no parachute, no nothing. That sucked. But and then I was down another 60 feet down an embankment. And the next thing I knew, uh, I woke up in a hospital. Uh, Not real clear of anything because I have no recollection of the accident except I could see that I clearly cut my climbing line. That I definitely know. Um, and I had my pencil hard hat on, which you know saved my life. Um, I was one, and I'm still mystified why people who are climbing trees don't keep their chin straps tight. Because as you know, well, no, when we first started with climbing trees, we were using construction hard hats to
Right.
climb trees.
Yep.
And then we graduated to Petzl. And I mean, I still have my hard hat. It's put away with my saddle. Um, and so I I say all this for this reason is that it was interesting a few moments ago you said about choices, and that's a huge word because
Yeah.
we all have choices in what we do and how we turn things around.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I had a severe frontal brain injury for years. I've had 17 surgeries. Um, I spoke at one it was up in Rhode Island about the heart hat. I had it with me at the time. It had a big crack in it, but without that hard hat, I'll tell you what, I would not be here. Period. And that's why I'm mystified why why climbers do not always keep those chin straps tight. I don't care what type of hard hat you wear, the pencil or the integral or whatever. You know, they don't do you any good if they're not tight. And but what I learned from all of this is not to quit. I think I know for a fact through all of this, I have getting a bachelor's degree. Uh, did that in 2013 through 2018. Took me a little bit. It took me like 4.5 years because I ended up having some medical issues. I took it in Christian theology, and my minor was Hebrew. Um, and but I think to talk about your story gives strength. And not only gives strength to you, but it gives strength to people saying it's okay if I ask somebody about it. You know, I cannot tell you, Dwayne, how many times that I've been in stores where little kids say, "Mommy, why is that man in a chair.
Yeah.
The mom would say, "Well, let's go." And I said, "No, I have no problem." I think it's important for people to know
Right, right.
because things do happen in life that aren't always pleasant, you know, and they they have to understand what life is about, you know. And I think sometimes it helps parents understand what life is about even more, how precious life is, you know. And so my real message behind all this is don't take life for granted, number one. And number two, find something that's meaningful to you. I don't care if you're walking on a wheelchair or where the scenario may be. I mean, my grandbabies, when they come down from New Hampshire, they love driving me around in my wheelchair, and it's pretty scary. I mean, they're going to be 12, 12, 10, and 8 next month, but that's what life's about is not to dwell on what happened to you, but how to dwell on something to go forward to.
Mm.
Because you know that personally. I don't have to tell you that, you know. And so for not to push, I'm doing myself a disservice, and I feel I'm doing other people a disservice by not sharing
Wow.
because there's difference in sharing and not sharing with other people. And you know, I've had a few medical issues as of late, but okay, like my little brother calls me the Energizer Bunny because I don't quit. I refuse to, you know, and I have stuff going on with me now that I never had before I was injured. What people don't understand is that now I'm a quad. I have very limited motion from my chest up. My right arm works pretty good, even though I use a stylus. It's one I came up with.
Okay.
Uh, and I've helped other people make it, you know. I believe even in our industry, the tree care industry, I believe we need to pay forward. You know, it may not cost anything, but we need to pay things forward. And that's what I try to do now. I can't tell you, Dwayne, how many times I've given away um uh what's what I'm looking for, just slipped my mind. A tray off my chair for little kids who are there with their grandmothers in the stores and they look at it and they love it and I just pull it out from underneath my chair and I give it to them.
Oh, wow.
So they can. I'm blessed even through the injury. As workers comp people can be real difficult to deal with. I'm able to purchase things through them that I'm still able to pay forward with other people who can't do it. And I think that's what we even need to be more of that within our own industry is to pay things forward to to people that don't have something as good as us. For instance, you know, uh, I had a friend that worked with me at a tree company down here who loved my silky. Well, I gave him both my silkies I had, and, back then they were 75, $80 a pop. I don't know what they're going for now, but
They're not free.
yeah. And so that's where I'm at with it all is pay things forward with what you can in life. May not be grandeur, but do what you can do.
You hear that a lot, and but it has a well, at least I could speak for myself, but a pretty profound meaning and powerful meaning coming from someone that has gone through what you've gone through, and to have that perspective on it. I can't help but think that acceptance must come in there at some point too, right? Like,
Yes. Um, like, I'll tell people, you want to go for a walk today? And they chuckle and, what do you need for a walk? And say, well, I got my six wheels. What do you got? You know, you need to find humor in that too. You know, and you do. You need to accept the fact that, hey, there's only one person's world that's going to make me walk. It's not Jerry Kelly. And if he decides to let me walk, fine. If he doesn't, I'll accept it. I'm okay with it. And that's what we are missing is acceptance through everything.
Yep. Yeah, it's something that it's a lesson I've learned in recent years, and it's from a phrase of, acceptance is the answer to all my problems. And if I find some person, place, or thing unacceptable to me, I until I realize that the solution to that comes from within myself, and then it's also expanding that into help from something greater than myself too. You know, yeah, that and I don't know if you find it, but sometimes these things that I've experienced in my life, not physical limitations like or a result or consequence like what's happened to you, but other things that have caused me a great amount of pain or discomfort have in the end, when I've found acceptance, have been able to be some of the greatest teachers as well.
I agree.
It's interesting. And, I have not forgotten about, our discussion, and I've put it out a few times, and I'll say it on here, and maybe, Tony, this will be our first, the first video things Tree Actions does, but I, when my son helped, uh, uh he's not he wasn't a paraplegic, but he's wheelchair bound due to an illness that was, a birth illness. But he was able to bring him up into they were successfully brought him up into a Doug fir, 110 foot. And I thought of Jerry, Tony, and I've talked to him about this, and I think he's pretty sure he's gonna hold me to it. And I've been, it needs to come to fruition, and I think it can. And this is another way to put my feet to the fire, but I think we need to figure out a way to do that because I know it's possible, and there's enough. This we'll put this word out, and we'll get it. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, and that's my bucket list.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, without a doubt, that's my bucket list. And you know, um, I believe you know it will come true.
It
You
will.
know, and you know, um, it'd be pretty cool. Because to go up there and be able to just cut a small limb with a handsaw taped to my hand, maybe or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, yeah, I was thinking of that because you're way you can move that arm a little bit. I was looking that you could probably move it enough that you could get her done.
Oh yeah, I could get her done. Trust me.
Yeah,
With
that's awesome. And when you were talking about the hard hat, if memory serves me correctly, this would have been before Petzl came out with the helmets that actually took earmuffs and stuff, was it? Or was it already one of the designs? Or was it a Vertec?
no, it didn't take earmuffs.
No, it was one of those rock. It was their Ikran Rock probably. It was one of their rock climbing helmets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, because we were, we realized a few of us, and when we were teaching, and so we were wearing them because we understood and learned that they provide superior protection, and especially for people doing what we did, being climbing and on ropes, and if we were to fall, that it would be a better form of protection for us. So we were choosing to wear them even though they weren't technically rated for industrial use. And I don't remember what year it was. I don't know, Tony, if you know when Petzl came out with, like, so many arborists were wearing them that they decided that they better make it, more suit for the arborist trade. So now they make Petzl helmets that are specific for really tree work, which they never used to do, which is interesting. There's a lot of companies that, now make equipment tree work specific that, came out of some tree guy saying, hey, this one works better than what I got. I'm going to adapt and modify and make it work like the helmet. The Grigri was one of those where we were using as lanyards, and they finally said, no, don't use it like that. And they made the Grillon, and it's countless others. But yeah, Tony, I don't know if you know when it came out.
I don't remember because it was like so many things happened like real quick with equipment there. And we went from the old Pelter hard hat with the old piece of throw line chin strap really quickly to something that was actually comfortable and wearable. Like it didn't take long. It was like 6-9 months. We like, hey, this I'll actually wear this hard hat. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that pelt thing was weighed like a ton.
Oh yeah.
Man.
And
and then they had the elastic straps, and they always fell off. And
well, the only reason like you put a chin strap on one of those is you had that guy in the crew that talked too much, so you'd get that chin strap real tight, so it hurt when he would talk all the time, so you'd shut him up. It didn't help at all to keep it on your head, but it did keep the guy that was too chatty from chatting too much.
Jerry, before we got started, you mentioned that you'd gone back and listened to some previous episodes, and particularly you said you listened to Norms a couple times. It was some pretty touching things you were talking about there when you were speaking about Norm Hall. And I understand that he was, I guess, a mentor and a teacher of yours that started back when you started the Care Trees.
Yeah, he was my first foreman I ever had. And I mean, as I stated earlier, he was a good guy, and if you really cared for you, he took you really under their wing, and really pushed. And for some odd reason, that happened to me. And and through that process, then I got to meet uh, his dad, Uncle. I always called him Uncle Larry.
Yeah.
He was the man. The man was a genius when it came to shrub pruning, and he's the one that really taught me how to become a really good ornamental and shrub pruner. Was his dad.
Okay.
But Normie, he was the one that, man, if he would be very perfectionist on the type of pruning cuts you'd have. You know, um, it looked like that egg. He didn't like it. You know, um, yeah, that little circle and stuff like that. And but he was also a man that wanted everybody to succeed. Um, and the way he made that happen, and I think that's how I became so exciting in the industry, was watching him how much he would learn so he could teach that back to other people. And he did. I mean, he he worked with a lot of people such as yourself and so on and so forth. And
Yeah.
he had that knack that was so calm.
He did.
You know, uh, I truly can only recall like one or two times that his voice got up there. You know, um, because of some things that he would continually tell you to do, and you just didn't grasp it. And then he would just, you know, rate you out a little, which you had it coming, you know, you know. And but that was norm. I mean, the people he worked with throughout the industry was incredible. To help with the different types of knowledge that he would pick up from them, they would pick up from him, and then all the conglomerates of everybody. I go back to the Porter rap.
Yeah. So you
You
do you
know,
remember, were you part of, were you, it would have been, you would have known him when he was in the midst of helping develop that thing?
yes, yes, yeah, and well, I mean that was pretty cool, and so he did that, and then he really got into uh, making different types of ropes, for lowering. One of the biggest when I got really good at lowering and doing like crane removals, he made me a bunch of spider legs, and those were pretty special, you know, and you could pretty much take any big piece with those on because if I'm not mistaken, they were like 15,000 rated. They're big. I think they're 5/8, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and he'd make them all, and and that was very grateful of him. And he never asked me for a penny of them for 'em, and there were like 5 of them, you know? Um, and those things were ginormous in doing crane removals.
So you did crane removals with Norm when you were in this Illinois?
Yeah, yeah. They, um, the most of them did 1 year. The only reason I know this is because, uh, the sales guy, um, he liked the way I started doing them, and so every type of crane removal he was getting, he'd send them to my way. Uh, oh my gosh. The most I did in 1 year was 35.
Holy moly.
Yeah, yeah, and but the craziest removal I ever did was with Norm. We had 3 cranes out there. It was a storm
Holy.
damage. We had 2 holding us, him and I, the the crane into so we could cut the limbs up and stuff like that, and then we had another crane picking the pieces up. That was crazy as all get out, and, you know, it's amazing, though, when people in your life, um, have meant so much to you, how much you appreciate them all the time, you know? Um, they don't they don't run away from troubles. They don't run away from things that are a little more difficult, And he was one that always if something didn't work, he'd find a way to make it work the next time,
Right.
And so, yeah, that was norming. I mean, to this day, I mean, I still have his phone number on my phone. I can never delete it.
Yeah.
There's some people like that in life that meant a lot, you know, and you just can't do it.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to put it. Can't delete the number from the phone. Yeah. Interesting. Um, yeah, Norm was one of those, I always, we call it the Human Forestry Podcast. It's our tagline. And, Norm was definitely one of those trees in the human forest that provided a lot of nutrients and a lot of shade and a lot of protection for a lot of people for a lot of years. And but and his dad was similar. His dad was the same way. Uh,
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's it's amazing how it just like filtered down between those two. It was like magic, you know. I mean, Norm's magic came from trees. Uncle Larry came from the shrubs and ornamental trees.
Wow.
And and I I mean, I'll never forget that there was a client in Winnetka, Illinois, where he took me to, and they had these burning bushes in front of the house, and they were hideous. I mean, even from a guy who didn't know that much about shrub pruning, I could tell they were hideous. So Uncle Lair got up in there with me and taught me everything for a half a day because they went around the side of the house there. And he goes, "Nuts the rest of the day, all years." Now I'm like, "You what?" He goes, "Yeah, you'll be fine." And you know, I said, "Okay." And Uncle Larry was another guy who, excuse me, if you appreciate what you did, he makes sure you do a certain client of his all the time. No ifs, ands, or buts. And there was there was another client of his that we did, and they had these red buds. Um, and after he taught me fruit in 1 year, I did it for like the next 15 years at this mom's house.
Wow.
And also in his backyard, we had a bunch of other uh, shrub pruning. But the thing is you feel extremely honored when someone trusts you like that because, as you know, Uncle Larry and Norm were very strict on making sure things were done properly. There was no shortcuts, you know. And you try a shortcut, you're gonna pay you're gonna pay the consequences. You won't be doing anything like that for a while.
So did you continue to do, like, that broad of a spectrum of tree work? Like, you from crane removal when you're doing crane removal, did you also have, sh hedge and shrub pruning in amongst that, or did you kinda have stages?
No, I kept it all. One thing um, that happened was that I was spoiled by certain arborists, sales guys and gal. Um, they really their clients sometimes would just ask me to come back continuously because how I treated them as a client and how I did my work. And I think, you know, um, we took, I was fortunate that um, when John Henriksen stepped down, another gentleman had stepped in,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and we would go to Dale Carnegie classes.
Okay.
And I was, I was very happy that I had that opportunity because that helped me grow in two ways, uh, and as a representative of the company, and plus as a person. Um, there's a lot in those classes that you took, and I think I took them twice a year for like 3 years in a row. Um, and I took another class of speaking in front of people with Dale Carnegie and stuff like that. So I was, and, and I guess part of it was also my attitude. I wanted to continually to improve. Uh, and it's interesting that that's the way things go. I mean, if you find someone that works for you and has a motivation to want to learn more, you're going to put a little bit more into that person because it makes them want to feel worth of what they're doing. And that's what happened to me. I can't deny any of that. If it wasn't for that, it would have been crazy.
Interesting. Yeah, it's true. Well, and I mean, you haven't really lost that even now, like it must be. Do you feel that's something that was gifted in you, or like, and it's in, especially with your accident and what happened, like you've maintained that, like you've gone on to get your degree, you haven't. I'm sure it couldn't have been. I mean, it hasn't all been smooth sailing, I'm sure.
Definitely not. Anyone who says there's no bumps in the road, I'd be lying. I wanted to commit suicide 3 times. Um, Sorry about that.
That's right.
When I was in the hospital, when I first got hurt, I was at Shepherd Center in Atlanta, Georgia here, and I want I didn't want to live because I felt inferior. That I wasn't going to be nothing. And as you know, then they say to shrink, which I needed. Don't take me wrong, and I will say it lightly. And so um, that's what got me back on the right trail. You know, um, to realize that there's better things ahead, not behind. You know, and I think sometimes we fail to realize that we have that possibility of something being greater in the future because we can't control behind. Behind is done and over. We all know that. And it's what we do after that is what makes the difference. Do we lull? Do we become passive and just like, oh, okay. And I can I I can promise you this. As you know, I'm an introvert, right? You know. Well, there's times I'd be at the Shepherd Center, and I remember, ironically, uh, that there's African American guy in the elevator, and he was like 6'5", right? And he looked down at his phone. I said, "Dude, you need to grow. You're too short." And he started telling me his story. As it turned out, it was his cousin, and she went to the same university I went to, and so we became friends and still are friends to this day. But I mean, I think I think I have the ability to see people's feelings on their face because I've been there, you know, and you try to help lighten up those nights, you know, and that's what we need to do. We really do.
Help people and lighten things up. Is that what you mean by that? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, I think everybody needs some encouragement, and humor goes a long way in that, and, you know, yeah, I don't think any of us ever, escape the 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 difficulties that come with life, and I don't know that there's point in really comparing one over another, but, you know I think that, the challenge that you were asked to face, and, that you had to choose to accept is bigger than some, and inspirational that you have that view of life now, and are giving that advice.
Yeah. Um, And like we said a few moments ago, it's not an easy road to get there, you know. And one once you get to that road, that's when peace sets into you. And it's not easy getting to a road. I do need to say though, with my situation, and unfortunately, it's not in everybody's situation. You don't have a support system, uh, and when you have a support system, it makes a world of a difference. Without a shadow of doubt. If I didn't have my two boys at that point in time, um, you know, one one came from the military when he was in there and stayed with me. The other was in Arizona, but they stayed with me. You know, relentlessly at the hospital. You know, they weren't going anywhere.
Uh, yeah.
And my brother and my sister, my two younger brothers, you know, plus I had my cousins and stuff. I had a support system. And, you know, the ironic thing is when I say support system, it doesn't only apply to this type of life. We need a support system in every part of our life, no matter who you are. You know, I don't care if you're a tree climber or stuff. If you're going to be successful or try to be successful, you need a support system around that.
Yep. Well, and you know, it just makes me think of my, you know, my journey, you know, when addiction became an issue in my life, and it was a dirty secret, you know, and there's a saying in the recovery world of we're as sick as our secrets. Because the thing about something that you know you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, or something that you know creates a shame or a guilt, and when you have that, at least for me, it kept me I didn't want anyone to know about it, and that eventually leads to isolation and disconnection, right? And you know, that's many have said that the opposite of addiction is connection. And you know, when you say having a support system, I mean that's absolutely vital, you know, in the way of people, and even in the way of spirit, you know, that there's whatever form you have that in, but to have you there's times when you're really, you know, in your own head, I guess, in a non, you know, it's a non-tangible thing that's going on there where you need some support in that way too, from something that's not really seen or heard. I don't know if that makes any sense,
Oh, definitely.
you know, and it's interesting you say that. It seems obvious in your case, right? And as but you're right. We all need that in all aspects of our lives. It's you know, it again, I the analogy of those human forests, the forest is so interconnected with every single thing, and they're all dependent on one another, you know, all organisms in a forest. It's like, I think it's such an example of us as humans, and we are just part of it anyway. Trees with knees. What do you think, Tony? Getting a little deep here, a little bit deep.
It's good. I just, you know, that, you know, the lessons that, you know, that you're telling, Jerry, are just so good because they apply to everything outside of tree work, right? Like, you know, surround yourself with good people, have a support network. When you need help, go get help. You know, accept accept things for what they are. Don't worry about what they could have been or what they aren't. You know, these things are just ways that, you know, hard lessons I've learned, luckily for myself, not as hard as you've had to learn them. But they, you know, and the good news is if they can apply to your situation, they can apply to, you know, the smaller things in life just as well too, right? And I think people forget that, you know, it took me a long time to figure out in my own life that, you know, just because I need to go see a shrink or a doctor or something doesn't mean I'm a weak person. It's just like, it's no different. My truck's broken down, so I take it to a mechanic. You know, my thought processes aren't quite working right. I need to go see a thought mechanic. You know, it's like, I don't feel bad when I take my truck to the mechanic because I need a new alternator. Why would I feel bad about getting myself to the shrink because I need to talk some shit through? You know, and I just think that those are lessons that you're bringing up that so many people look over. And it doesn't have to be, the huge traumatic life change like you've experienced with your accident. Sometimes just the small things that makes a world of difference.
We haven't gone away. I guess they say, I don't know how much pause on radio is bad, but there's power in the pause too.
Mm-hmm.
I can appreciate it. It's a lot to take in. It really is, you know, and then thanks, Jerry, for being willing to share. I've heard you tell the story a few times, and you've told it to me in person, and you know, I think it's a common theme, whether the consequence, there for a lot of people that might have been the last thing they saw, was like you said, for sure you cut the rope. That's all you really remember, right?
Oh yeah.
But for some people, that might be the last memory they had, right? They knew that that's what happened, but that's it, right? And while the consequences are quite severe, you can share that and have gone on to be a part of other people's lives and to continue to be like and getting over that feeling of not being valuable. How did that, like, do you know how that happened, or was there a point where that occurred for you, do you think?
I saw a shrink psychologist, um, and like Tony said, that because you see one doesn't make you weak. To me, when you see one, actually makes you stronger because you understand that there's something there that you need help with. You know, um, and maybe it's guidance, whatever the scenario may be for you. But I know that we put too much pressure on ourselves, even within the tree care industry, to be successful, to be like somebody else instead of just being who you are.
Yeah. Well, that's what I found interesting about your, the fact that you kept up, you know, your the spectrum within the arboriculture. 35 crane removals in a year, but you still were doing hedge work in that time frame. That lot of that's that may be part of the key to it. Because you I know a lot of people. I might even be guilty of this myself, but you grow past that. I don't do shrubs anymore. I'm a train removal guy, but and when I think about it, like now I do a lot of people's, like I have an old friend that, is quite elderly, and his wife loves his lilac, right? She loves her lilac, and I'll go deadhead her lilac. And it's quite a tedious, but hey, I sit there and we chat and I snip, 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 and she just absolutely loves it. And the lilac looks so much better, and it blossoms better. And I know what to do. I know how to take care of it. I know what it needs. And she said, how come nobody's ever done this for my lilac before? Like, I had no idea. And it's like, well, and then, but there's so many people just won't bother with a lilac. Like, why do I want to prune a lilac? But yet to her, it means everything. And I quite enjoy it.
I find peace in doing it. Actually, you know, I mean, I'll never forget one client. They said to me, he goes, well, "I want it done this way." It was just Saturday, no less. Uh, and need to get done this way, and that way. I said, "Look, if you want it done correctly, go away with your wife and son and come back in 3 hours." And he never heard that someone say like that to him, right? I said, "I got this under control, dude. Trust me." and when he came back, is beyond what he thought it would be, you know. And he goes, no one else is touching these shrubs except for you, Fernella. And, and because as you well know, people like taking shortcuts. Even people in the tree care industry, instead of using hand pruners on shrubs, they use head shears. And you don't get out the deadwood, you don't bring more light into it or anything like that. And so we always use hand pruners. Get old Felco too, you know. Um, and they they were the best things ever, you know. And oh no, I I loved the diverse of doing everything because it kept you strong in each and every part of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And I think that's one thing. You know, some people love climbing trees because they they don't have, and as you know, doing a lilac, even that it's an artistic thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
It is.
And same thing, like I had a client who loved ironwoods, but no one could ever prove it right until I started doing it for her, you know, and apple ravines and things like that, and panic burn and stuff like that. But those are things though that rounded you out to be who you are in the industry. To stay just a tree climber, yeah, maybe that's what you're good at, but or could be really, really good at. But unless you push yourself outside those boundaries, you'll never know.
Yeah.
And I was, again, you and I both know, you know, having Uncle Larry around, you're going to learn.
One way or another. I don't know, Tony, I've never asked you. I don't know, when you do you do you still dabble in, or still do? I don't even know. I just never thought about talking to you about that. Like, I know you do removals and big work and train with your brother's company, but and outside of that, but, like, when was the last time you I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but, you know, where you didn't have to get off the ground necessarily, just, you know?
Actually, I tell everyone I have the perfect arborist job now. I get to climb and do that and be in the bucket and lift and stuff when I want now. So, sometimes I'm at the point in my career where I don't have to do that anymore, which is kind of nice. I
Yeah,
still
yeah.
choose to every once in a while, but most of the time, and actually, I actually get to do some small shrub and tree pruning fairly often because we're trying to bring people up to speed with those types of things.
Yeah, yeah.
So I actually get out to do more. But back in the day when I was full time, barrel chested freedom fighter arborist full time, I loved the dogwoods. I'm like, call me. I'm tired of doing these big nasty dead things. I want to more do some yew hedges for a while. Like get in some dogwoods. Like nobody ever called me for their azalea bushes to remove, but
Yeah. Right.
now I always enjoyed that work. I liked the change of pace. I like being able to do some of the larger work and then being able to scale back a little bit and do some of the smaller work. And I always found that to be a little more satisfying.
Well, I was gonna say it probably is easier, it mixes up if all you're ever doing is pounding out removals, like, your body's gonna show it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because no matter what, doing tree removals isn't easy work. No matter whether you're chipping or whether you're climbing, like it's harder than average work compared to pruning shrubs
Yeah.
or apples or whatever, right? Like ornamentals. It's just a different level of labor. Well, Jerry, I wonder what would you have to say to anyone out there facing an injury or trying to recover from something, or, from a person that's, sustained a fall like yourself to, being in a quadriplegic to 20 years later, you got a degree, you still have relationships with your family, you got grandkids, like, how do you navigate challenges of life? I can't think of anyone better to give some advice on that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, um, I think, a, and as you well know, when you get into a fight for your life, per se, you have to come out swinging. For if you don't, then you're gonna lose that fight. And when you're in a position, whether you're hurt or not, because I like looking at things as a life aspect, not just a hurt aspect. Um, but
Mhm.
I'll cover the hurt thing first, because I think is when you get hurt, and yeah, mine's a little severe than some others, but not as severe as some others. Um, is you need to make sure you find yourself support. Um, make sure that when someone says to you, "Hey, Jerry, you need to talk to our shrink," listen to it because it's not bad. And I'm gonna tell you something right now. Since my injury, I still talk to my same shrink I do twice a week for the last ever since I've been hurt. We talk, and she lives in California, and we do video sometimes, and we do phone. You know, she was one of my pain psychologists at Shepherd Center, and she's very very good. But when you have someone who stands by you, um, like her, she was probably one of my greatest support systems. Um, besides my boys, yeah, my other family was great support, but she was there since almost day one and to this very day. Um, and excuse me, she would tell you also this, that the first time saw her, she said, "Jerry, I can spend here a few minutes, but I'll be back tomorrow." I mean, this was like at 4:30 because her day was about to end, and I was in a lot of pain. I was, you want to know what I was on,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
she would say, "I'll be back tomorrow." Well, tomorrow lasted almost 2.5 hours later. She wasn't going to leave me in that type of pain. And you learn how to breathe, and you learn how to do this and things like that. And she taught me how not to use the word "I should" or "I could." She always taught me, get those out of your vocabularies. I should do this. No, you either want to do it or you don't want to do it. And I get could out of your vocabulary. Well, could I do it or couldn't I do it? No, make a decision. Are you going to do it or not?
Right.
And it's this very day, those two words, and there's others, but those are the very poignant words that still stick very strong in my head. And I think that's been helpful to my recovery. Um, and no matter what injury we have, physical, mental, where case it goes, don't do it alone because that's when, like you said earlier, you get that disconnection when you start doing it earlier by yourself, and it's not helpful, and it's not. And here's the thing, right? It's not easy for us to realize that we need to help. It's very difficult. I know it was for me. Like I stated, I wanted to commit suicide 3 different times, and you have to overcome those things. And you know, I I remember to this very day, I had to leave the job site one time, and one of my coworkers put Clement saw through his cap. And, it's a long story, but he didn't have the support at first, but he got it. We made sure he got it. But I had another guy fall 30 feet out of the tree because he didn't tie his knot properly and he fell. He was lucky. Nothing happened to him, just a real bad headache. And, but, we need to be with each other through these hard times when you're hurt, when physically or not.
I agree. It's a we program.
It is. It is. And I think sometimes we fail to realize how much of a we program it is.
Well, and that that 1,000-pound phone, or that sometimes it takes like 1,000 pounds pressure to open your mouth to utter the words "I need help" or ask for help. And it is something I can attest to, that the more you do it, the easier it does get, and the rewards are quite remarkable. A lot more than you'd expect. And I think for me, it was Jerry. It was my when I think about all that stuff, it's pride and ego. That stops that. I want to do it myself. I think of Frank Sinatra, right? I'm going to do it my way.
But who doesn't want to do it their way? In seriousness, even, I mean, at some point in time, I want to do things my way, but without people around me to stand by my side, uh, it was unsustainable.
Yeah, it's a good word.
And I, I know that in your, in the industry that we're in, is that it's not it's not an easy thing to be in. It's it it's physically demanding. It's like you stated earlier. It's the body takes a beating and then some. You know, and it's not the kind of beating we like to take, but you know, um, when you start lugging logs out of someone's backyard from a removal, that's no fun. When there's you can't get the log cart through the gate, you know, and then so yeah, but take care of yourself uh, physically, because if you don't, you're just going to be a waste of protoplasm down the road.
Way to put it. Well, Jerry, we're thinking of starting something new for 2026, and we haven't. I don't know if you were familiar with Shigo's pithy points.
Yes,
Okay, do you have a favorite, or
I
do you want to just pick one?
I can't remember off the top of my head, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. There's 900 of them, so. But you could pick a number, and we can use it to finish our chat.
14.
14. Ooh, that was fast. Here we go. $14. Shouldn't be this hard to find, but okay. Tree pithy point number 14. Trees do not move away from their problems.
I'll choose that.
That's pithy point number 14. Wow. And neither can we, or should we? Well, Jerry, I want to thank you for taking, people probably don't know we had you scheduled last year. Actually, it might have been 24, but it was 25. Yeah, and you had some happened, and we got a call from your nurse saying you can't make it, but but we were able to reschedule it.
I'm glad we did.
Yeah, so my and we've planted the seed even further and cast it out there. Um, I've thought for a while about how to make it happen, and I think I'd like to the anyone that has it on their hearts and has the time and the resources uh, that to help with it. I got all sorts of ideas of taking you up a tree, Jerry, somewhere. I'd like to be part of it. I'd like help doing it. I can't do it myself. And I don't know if it's got to be a redwood or if it's got to be I don't know if you have a favorite, but what like if you had the bucket, what's in the bucket on that tree climbing bucket list?
Oh, it'd be like a white oak, red oak, bur oak. Those are
Okay, an
still
oak.
my those are still my favorite trees in my heart still.
So is there's a particular oak in a particular place?
No, I have no
Okay.
particular.
Okay.
I just love them.
All right. Well, there we go. We need a big oak. Tony's probably got ideas.
Oh, yeah, we know people,
And
all
then
kinds of
as far
connections.
as you getting around, like you're fine getting anywhere, or do we need to come to you?
No, no, I can get anywhere. I got my own van, my good old power wheelchair. I can do anything I want.
All right.
I drag my motion on. That's all.
Well, I look forward to how this will unfold and the day that we get to you know what? Maybe we can just make it a tree actions live event.